Hello. Okay, hold on. I gotta get you set up so I can see you better here. Um, okay, hold on. Angela, I cannot hear you. You're muted. You have to unmute yourself.
That works. I was just saying that I think I'm on with my computer audio, but I have a microphone.
So let's go into Zoom. You know where the little mute thing is? Click the
Yes.
little arrow.
So I'm
You
using
can
that one for
select your
microphone.
microphone.
Oh, we're good.
You're good?
If you can hear me,
I can hear
then
you.
we're good.
Sounds really clear. Um,
Cool.
Awesome. Okay. So 1 second though, I do need to you're my first interview of the day. So I'm just like, get yourself sorted. Hold on. Let me just
How
quickly
many do you do a day?
get, I try to do 4
Wow.
interviews, no more than that though. I find that's a lot. It's very draining to be on
Yeah,
Zoom
no
for so
kidding.
long. And then I used to try and do like interviews and solo episodes, but I find it's like almost like a different headspace. So tomorrow I'll do the
Yeah.
solos, but we try to batch. That way it's like, okay, no one bothered me for 2 days. I'm podcasting.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's lovely.
So usually it works pretty well.
Well, I'm glad I'm first because I get like all of your
All my
excitable
energy.
energy. Yeah.
Exactly.
And hopefully I can like blast energy out so that your next one's really great too.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited to chat with you. I feel like I haven't seen you in a little while and I just
I
want to know
know
like
it
what's
has been a
going
while.
on. And I love your backdrop. It looks really good. Um, well, we're going to talk about POP. We're going to talk about you and your fabulous business. I'm really excited about hearing from you because also your business is different, right? Because you guys
Mhm.
do staging as
Yes.
well, right? And so I want to talk about your business model. Obviously, I think it'd be really helpful for everyone to hear about your story of taking power process and like the big thing that you did, right? It
Day
like on the
one.
first day, on day one.
Yeah.
Like I want you to tell that because it's so awesome. Um, and anything else, like maybe we'll start with, I guess, kind of like your journey, like how your business started, and then where you were at when you found Power of Process. I think your story is super inspirational. And also talk about your partnership because that's
Cool.
kind of neat. There's
Yeah.
somebody in designer's room. I was like, you need to connect with Angela. I don't know if she did.
No, not yet, but I do know there's somebody that works with their mom because I think I
Yeah.
follow them on social media and they're starting to post with that. So that's really cool.
Yeah. I was like, you got to talk to Angela. That's me. I'm always connecting people. I'm like,
Yeah,
who
I love
can I
that.
hook you up with? All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clap. And I'm just going to welcome you. And then I'll ask you to kind of introduce yourself. Oh, yeah. And at the end, remember, we share a little last nugget of wisdom. So it can be
Yeah.
something that we've already talked about that you just want to like hone in and be like, this is really, we talked about this, but it's so important, or something completely unrelated. Okay, here we go. All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business. Welcome to Resilient by Design, Angela. I'm really excited to finally have you on this podcast. I feel like we could have had you on this podcast like what, a year ago, 2 years ago? I'm so excited
Yeah,
you're
it's
here
been
today.
been a long time coming for sure.
So why don't we just, before we dive into all the juicy goodness, why don't you just start off by letting our listeners know who you are?
My name is Angela Wainscott, and I am the owner and principal designer of Upstaged Design, which is in Bruce County, Ontario. So we're kind of in rural Ontario, but we kind of service kind of everywhere. It's full service, and then we also do home staging. So we work with realtors and homeowners and different contractors and all kinds of people. So yeah.
And your company name is?
Upstage design.
Yeah,
It's
it's
probably good
such
to
a,
tell people that.
I know. I love that. I mean, it'll be in the show notes, and I'm sure I just did it in the intro, but I think it's just such a great little name. Not little, like it's such a great name. Like it just, Upstaged is just clever. I like it.
We say we're not in the business of upstaging anyone. We're just upstaging your home.
Yeah, yeah. We're not trying to be better than you.
Yeah.
So cute. Okay, so let's just dive into like there's so many things that we could talk about.
But why don't we start with how we met? Let's talk
Yeah.
about like, how did you find me? When was that? And why did you sort of fall into my world? And what made you decide to sign up for my course for Power of Process?
Sure. So I had been doing my business on the side for a couple of years. I actually started when I was on maternity leave with my son. First pregnancy, I was completely overwhelmed and also exhausted and also really bored of just sitting around and watching a baby all the time, to be honest. So I just needed something. I needed a creative outlet, and my family had always renovated houses. I grew up with my parents like buying and flipping houses essentially, and getting calls from the bank or realtors saying, hey, they're going to tear this house down. You want to come check it out? And my parents would go, and 9 out of 10 times they would buy the house that needed to be torn down. So I got to live with like a really nice house and then a just absolute dumpster dive and then it would kind of go back and forth. So I had that in my background and learned a lot growing up in terms of that. And I always would put their homes into the computer on The Sims, actually, is where I started out, got my hot start. So I would put the houses in. I would go out with my little tape measure, like in grade 4, and I would measure all of the rooms, put them into the computer. And I had so much fun doing that. And then I just seeing my parents, because they were both entrepreneurs, so seeing them do what they did, I just thought, oh my God, I'm never going to do this. I don't want to, I don't want to stress out my parents. I want to have a job that I have money coming in every week. I don't want to be a burden to anyone. So I promised my dad, I will never become an entrepreneur. Don't worry about me. I will keep straight and narrow. I'm not going to do anything crazy.
Okay,
Um,
hold on. So your parents were entrepreneurs, or they just did that on the side?
They were. So they were entrepreneurs. So they not only did they renovate and then sell the houses, they were also in the business of doing it for other people. So they would wallpaper and drywall and all of the things you could do, they did. So yeah, so I got to learn. I pretty much was raised in construction zones all of the time. So yeah, so they had a good life as an entrepreneur, but I definitely saw the highs and lows of it firsthand, right? So I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
oh, I don't want to make anyone worried. And I want to wear a dress every day was my thing, is I'm going to wear a dress every day.
I love
So
that. I love that.
obviously it didn't work out like that. But I did go to school for marketing and graphic design kind of first, and I did work in corporate for quite a while. And then I decided, you know what? I love this so much. I have so much fun doing this. And because I was on maternity leave and people were starting to kind of come to me and be like, hey, your house looks amazing. Can you do my house? So it started out as just like a little bit on the side. And that's when I found your podcast, is I was like, okay, if people are asking me to do this, I need to know what I'm doing. I know that I have the design part. I have like the natural gift for that. I have the construction background, but I don't have education for one, and I don't have any understanding of how to run a design business. So I stumbled across your podcast. I think there's like 3 or 4 other podcasts that were kind of all in the mix. And I just like devoured knowledge. Like any podcast I could get, any book, it was just like get in my belly. So I just took it all
Like a
in.
sponge.
Exactly. And I learned so much from the podcast. And I think it was on there that you had your you were advertising for Power Process. And that was something that I was really lacking in my business. I didn't necessarily know that I was lacking process at the time. I just was happy to be doing it kind of as a side. It started out as styling too, so it was a little bit less intense than what I'm doing now. And I just never really thought that I could go out on my own and do it by myself. And it wasn't even something that I think, because I had made that promise about not becoming an entrepreneur, I think that kind of was sticking with me. I had a really good job. I was an executive director at a hospital foundation. And then COVID
Wow.
happened. And it sucked to work at a hospital. And I was doing like event planning and all of the fun parts of the job. But I wasn't able to interact with anybody. I wasn't able to plan events because there was no opportunity to get together. And I wasn't even able to eat with my coworkers. So I was struggling as a human, because I'm very outgoing and passionate about people. That's the whole point of even this job, is updating homes, uplifting people. Like people are number one in everything I do. So having COVID happen at my other job, and then I had a couple coworkers who were like, you don't belong here. You need to leave. You are meant to have an interior design business and you need to go for it. And so I was actually talking to one of my coworkers there, and I pretty much was telling her like, okay, this power process, it sounds really great. It seems like it would be maybe like my first big move into it, because at that time I hadn't spent any money at all on my business. I had made an Instagram page, taken my own photos, like nothing too serious. So this felt like a real step into it. And yeah, so that is how I found Power of Process. And my work friend was like, go for it. Like, you need to get out of here. So
That's
I
amazing. I
signed
love that
up
you had
and
that.
yeah.
And we're going to dive into what happened after that. I love your story. It's just so, oh my gosh, you were a first in for me in a couple of ways, but in one really impactful and powerful way. And we're going to share that in just a minute. What happened? Like, you had a massive change
Mhm.
in your life very quickly after signing up for Power Process. But I do want to, before we dive into that, I do want to just honor that we sometimes fight our destiny, right?
Totally.
It's like, that's what I'm hearing. And that's what I'm like, that's sort of what I'm hearing, because as someone who also grew up with entrepreneurial parents, I can really relate to hearing you say, I saw the ups and downs, right? It's not always raining money, right? There are times when it's tough and money is tight. And so that was what I witnessed growing up with a single mom running her own business. Was like, we're buying this big home. Okay, now we have to sell that home. And honey, we can't go shopping. Like, it was really a roller coaster for me. So I can imagine others growing up with entrepreneurial parents experience that. And so I just want to like take a moment to just say, for anyone listening who's like, oh, has this calling, right? You've got this sort of this pull telling you to do something, but you're resisting it because you're afraid, right?
Mhm.
Or whatever the reason might be. Usually it's out of fear. I feel like Angela's story, for those listening, is your wake up call. Like, if you have that passion for something, be it interior design, decorating, staging, architecture, something in the creative field, and you're resisting it because you're afraid that it's not secure, you're not going to make money. I want this story, Angela's story, and this podcast to let you know that, like, you can do it. And in some ways, hearing your story, Angela, it's funny because it's like, you had no chance a life in corporate. Growing up in that environment, come on, you were built for this.
No kidding. That job was good for me in that I was kind of like I had a board of directors, but I was essentially in charge, and I need that. I know I do. But yes, it was it was too limiting. I had to be bigger. So
Amazing. Okay, so let's dive in. So then what happened? So when did you take Power of Process? Do you remember?
so I actually have no idea. I'm pretty sure I know I took it twice. That's why I'm saying, when did I take it? I think the first go was 2021.
Yeah, that sounds
And
about right.
then, or
I
maybe
can
it was
remember
either
that.
2020 or 2021. I think it was 2021 because it was after, yeah, 2021. Because
Yeah.
I say that I've had children every 2 years, but one of them was my business. So I had Cedric and then Darcy and then the business. And now I'm having another one this year. So I'm like just
Oh,
going for it.
congratulations. That's so
Thank you.
exciting. Your business
Yeah.
is a baby. It totally is.
It,
Anyone listening can totally
definitely.
relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So took it power of process. And that was my first, like, okay, I'm gonna do this investment for myself. You're totally right. I had no choice. I was going home and designing things that didn't exist. Like I would go on to Pinterest or
Were you
whatever
still
and
using Sims? Were you still on The
like
Sims?
I was at the Sims point for a while. I had upgraded my software just for fun. Like I honestly wasn't even being
I love
paid.
that.
I was paying for the software to play around with. So yes, it was totally my calling. But yeah, it is scary. And my husband comes from a family that's very like, you have to do this a certain way. Like very by the book,
Mm.
very like think about it. They're great people. They really think about every decision they make. And that makes them very smart at like investing and all of those things, right? And then my side of the family is very go after it, like do anything that can happen, they're just gonna say yes to. So they like we lived on a commune for a little bit, which is like a totally other story. Like there's
Totally.
so
That's
many
a whole
things
other
that
podcast. We
totally
definitely
other
need to talk
podcasts,
about that
but
one.
they would just say yes to every situation. So I grew up with these yes men. So you would think that it would be so natural for me to jump into the entrepreneurial lifestyle. And for some reason I was fighting it. You're right. But anyways, Power
So,
process comes along.
okay. So tell me what happens next. I mean, I know. Tell everyone, tell everyone listening
So
what happened.
first day of power process, I don't even think it's day one. It was like homework, pre-course work. So I've always been super spiritual because I grew up on a commune. And so that was always kind of there. And then Rebecca's very, you know how you are, a little bit woo-woo, but
A
not
little bit
totally,
woo-woo.
not
People tell me, they're
full
like,
overboard. I just
yeah,
like
yeah,
that
yeah.
word.
I'm a little bit woo-woo, but
Just a
it's like,
little,
I
not
feel like I
not
have a happy balance.
exactly, not enough to
Yeah.
scare anyone off. Um, so the pre-course work was imagine yourself in 10 years or 5 years, 5 years, 10 years. I'm not sure.
Yes.
Imagine
Something
yourself
like that.
in
I don't
this
remember
period of
specifically.
time. What do you have? What does life look like? What do you see yourself doing? And I am like the queen of manifestation. I got my husband that way. I got my house that way.
Well,
Everything that I have
hello.
in
Okay.
life,
Hold up.
which we can talk about.
I'm making a note right now because like that's something we're going to talk about. If we don't have time today, you are coming back on to talk about that. I love it.
Absolutely. I love it. But anyways, so I had never allowed myself to dream about a future business. And I don't know if it was that I was scared. I don't know if it's the promise I made. I don't know what it is, but I had never actually looked at, okay, what does my like in 5 years, what's my business going to be? So I sat down and I was going to write this all out. And all of a sudden I just had this vision, like it just came over me, and it was beautiful. And it wasn't even like, it's weird because I'm not writing like, oh, I'm going to be in this house and I'm getting my business going to make this much money. It was honestly just a picture of like a Ferris wheel and a mansion, like just all of these beautiful things, like cotton candy, like things that totally not related to the business. Over there, a huge red brick wall, taller than I could see. Like if I looked up, I could never see the top of it, but I could see through the gate, all of this stuff on the other side. And as I'm picturing myself just kind of standing there looking, I am doing this with my hands, just kind of moving them back and forth. And I realized I have the keys to the stupid gate in my hand, and I just never opened it yet. And it was just like this, what
Oh
what am
my
I
God.
doing
Angela, I
moment.
have goosebumps right now. Like I
Yeah.
legit have goosebumps right now. This is freaking amazing.
It
Okay,
was
keep going.
wild. Like it was just this feeling, this overwhelming feeling of like, girl, you've had the keys the entire time, like years. Like not,
Yes.
this hasn't been a moment. This has been coming for years. And so I decided to open the gate that day. We joined our very first power process call, and I was in my office at work. I was on my break, and I had to talk very quietly because I had decided that very moment, joining the call, that I not only had the keys to the city, but I would be quitting my job that day. So I messaged everybody in the group. We all had a chance to kind of introduce ourselves, and I was so excited to go first. I was just so excited to start my future. Like I had been kind of on pause for a while, I guess. And I was just like, I'm hitting play today. Here we go. So I messaged everybody because I couldn't say it out loud because I hadn't quit yet. I just said, hey, everybody, I'm quitting my job today.
Okay, stop right there. I remember this moment inside our Zoom call so vividly because, first of all, I have never had someone who's taking my course say, now, thank you very much, Rebecca. I've decided to quit my job. There were several things going on at that moment in my mind. First of all, I was like, fuck yeah, like good for her. She's totally just taking the reins and making things happen. And then my second thought was, holy fuck. Did I influence her to quit her job? I don't want to be responsible for this woman's future. But it was so inspirational. And everybody in the chat was like, oh my God, way to go. Like, you go, girl. That's amazing. And I still like, it's funny. My memory's pretty crappy at best, but I remember you in that call, was it like a small office or a storage room or something? I don't know. It was like, it looked
It
super
was
corporate.
definitely not designer friendly. It was
No.
an okay size, but it was, yes, very dark, and yeah.
Yeah, it
My
was just like you obviously weren't at home, like most
my
people are
vertical
on this
blinds.
call. Totally. And you said, I'm going to do it. So then what happened?
So I had already had sort of a wait list, like just a little bit. I was working on clients and I wasn't having an issue getting more at that time. I was charging way too low. I was charging $35 an hour. So
Ooh.
you can understand why I was getting these clients. But I just felt finally ready. And it's just so funny because everybody else knew, like everybody like nobody was surprised. There was zero surprise in the world. My husband was totally fine with it. He didn't know that I was quitting my job when I told the power of process. He knew
We
when
heard
I
it
quit my job.
first.
You heard it
Yes, I
first.
love that.
And I know I honestly wouldn't have quit without his support because I was just nervous because again, he came from the family that really thinks everything out. So I was never going to say, "Hey, I'm going to quit my job." And he was actually the one that brought it up to me kind of a couple months earlier. I never took it seriously at all. He said it and it went in one ear and out the other. But he had kind of said, "Hey, if you're looking towards like growing your design business, you should reach out to this girl." So he actually put me in contact with a designer he knew from work, which was super cool because I ended up having like an hour-long conversation with her on the phone. And that just kind of gave me that like he's going to be okay with this. So I just felt like,
Amazing.
okay, I have that behind me that I can move forward. But yeah, he had no idea. I had no idea. I didn't know when I woke up and went into work that day that I was going to quit my job. I only
Okay,
knew
so how much time lapsed between our very first Zoom call inside Power Process where you told everyone I've made this decision? When did you actually give your notice at your job?
an hour after.
The same
So
day.
so I had messaged on, so I decided like, I don't know, 20 minutes before our call, I texted the people I needed, or I sent an email saying like, "Hey, can we have a meeting at 3 p.m.?" And 3 p.m. came around and I quit my job. So it was very
OMG.
fast.
I love that. I mean, I did not realize it happened the same day. And
Yeah.
then you were able to, you had 2 weeks or something, right? I feel like you were still working out your jobs. You were still doing it in a little room when you would show up for
Yes.
the calls.
Yeah, I
Um,
think I gave them like 3 or 4 weeks just to give them a little bit
okay.
extra, but
So
yeah.
we were still in Power Process when you were like, I don't know, this is all kind of coming back to me, but I feel like towards the end of POP, you were no longer working.
No, I was hosting a moving on up party because I was moving on up to Upstaged. So I was busy planning that, and yeah, I was just walking on air at that point.
Amazing. Well, I thank you for sharing that story here. I think it's really helpful for other people to hear specifically the details, like the nitty gritty guts of a transition, because a lot of designers do come into the interior design industry as a second, third, fourth career. Like it's very
Mhm.
common. In fact, now that I have been exposed to so many designers through the podcast and through the coaching, I realize I think actually the majority of designers had a previous career. The majority of designers don't go directly to school and become a designer. Of course, there's always going to be designers that know that right from the get-go and that's their path, but like your husband's family, but
Mhm.
it is more common than I really realized to start a design firm after having worked corporate, worked in some other industry, completely unrelated. And so I just love hearing that the nitty-gritty of like how you quit your job. And like I love that Power of Process was I don't know what I don't want to call it. It's obviously
The
you were ready to make that
catalyst.
decision. There you go. That's the word. Thank you, Angela. Catalyst. Now, not to say that anyone who takes Power Process has to quit their job, but if you're ripe and ready, like the support is there in that group, right? And in the trainings.
And the
Okay, so
confidence. Like it
right.
just seeing what, and I mean, we were obviously not very far in. I had done pre-course work and had seen module one, right? So we weren't deep into it, but I just knew that what I was lacking was that business, like the how or like the steps. Like I just needed step one, step two. And yeah, just like that awakening of like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. I think a lot of people don't go into interior design right away because it's one of those jobs like being an artist or a singer, or you know what I mean? It's not as lofty, I guess, as those goals, but that's scary for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a career, it's a creative career.
Mhm.
And running your own business is, you know, it's not something to shake a stick at. It is not easy. And especially as someone who like yourself, or even me, who's grown up with entrepreneurial parents around, like you really understood that it's not this painted picture of,
Right.
oh, yay, I get to be my own boss. It'll be perfect.
Exactly.
There's so much more to it.
And if you do it that way, you're not going to be successful. Like you have to have the process, and you also have to, I'm so thankful for my corporate background because I did all of their financials for years. So I came to my own business with all of the knowledge and, being able to do those monthly bookkeeping instead of pushing it off for 6 months and then hoping for the best at the end of the year. So I feel like there's so many skills that I definitely learned in that position that I would never have been as successful if I didn't have that behind me already. But yeah, I think it's really important. I think I know a lot of people that are entrepreneurs that are just, like, woohoo, here we go, and don't realize how serious it is. So
Yeah. You're lucky you have that financial background. I mean, a lot of us don't have that.
mhm.
So you're like the full package woman.
Yeah, baby.
And let's just talk a minute. In a minute, I do want to dive into some of the big takeaways that you had from Power of Process, and how obviously the biggest one was that you were ready for it and you were diving into your career. But before we do that, can you just share that you have a business partner and sort of how that came about with our audience?
Yes. So I work with my mom. She's my bestie. I don't think everyone gets to say that. So I've learned, I guess, sort of the further that we've gone, that I am super lucky to be able to have that. My mom has had years and years and years and years of education, just being like hands-on in the construction industry. So she is amazing at things like roof pitches and like all of those details that I definitely did not start out with. So yeah, so it just made sense to kind of bring her on board too and do things together. So we are a mother-daughter duo. She is a very lively lady and we have a lot of fun together. I couldn't imagine doing it with anyone else.
Yeah, you guys do some really cute things on Instagram. I've seen some like videos,
Hmm.
mother-daughter duo. So my question is, when you quit your job, was that always the plan to go and work with your mom? Or did that happen later?
I think it was like a happy luxury of like, okay, she has the knowledge here that don't have. I love doing like all of the computer things. Like I love doing the floor plans and the renderings and all of that. And she's got more of like the style eye, and she will go into somebody's house, move two things on the bookshelf, and it's like, oh my gosh, why didn't I have this the whole time? So I feel like our skills just really balance each other. And yeah, I had brought her in right away because it just made a lot of sense. And yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I mean, I'm sure many people listening are like, well, that must be nice to have that luxury of having your mom on board. Like I personally don't think working with my mom would be ideal. I think it probably would end in some strife, but um, I think that's really cool. And that might even be a whole other conversation. Just what is it like to have a business partner, and how do you divvy up those tasks? And I've talked to other designers about this a little bit, like offline, just in life. And it's really interesting because a lot of partnerships don't work. And so I'm always curious, like, what are the things that make it work? Like, obviously your
Mhm.
family, but that's not enough, right? There have to be, like what you said, you each kind of come at it with a different skill set. And so where one person is
Exactly.
a little weaker, the other person is stronger.
Yep.
Um,
And then we
yeah.
also, the other thing that really works well for us is that we do have different experiences. Like we are in completely different generations. So I think if I was working with someone my age, we would definitely step on each other's toes. But because we have these like generational knowledge, and because our whole business is kind of like for different people at their unique stage of life. So whether they're, moving, or they just had a baby, or they like, we've kind of have experience that spans all of those different phases of life. So it's been really, really beneficial because if we have someone that's downsizing, mom is like, oh, like, let's talk storage. Let's talk. So it's just really, really cool. And I think both of us have the same focus, and it's not design, like as much as we both love design and styling and all of the things, it's really that we just both love people. Like we just genuinely want to be with people, help people, make life easier for people. So I think
Aw,
if your very base mission and vision all align, then you're okay. But if you guys kind of go in with different objectives, it's not going to work out.
that's awesome. I love that. And obviously you learned that from your mom. So that's really
Yeah.
sweet. She must feel very, very lucky. I think as a mother, like my children are very young, but I mean, I just imagine that scenario, like how lucky your mom must feel. She did something right with you.
She's
Okay,
very
so
proud.
let's talk a little bit more about specifics.
Sure.
So like let's just sort of, because you didn't have a business when you took Power of Process, you were working corporate. Your mom had been running a business. What did you learn in Power of Process that maybe your mother didn't necessarily know? Was there anything that you came to the table with? You're like, here's what I'm learning inside this course. Let's apply this.
I learned everything. I was flying by the absolute seat of my pants before. Like, if I thought I had a business, that is a funny little joke because I would literally, I'm working with now, I have a group of designers, thanks to Power of Process as well, that we actually meet once a week. And them seeing how far I have come in my business is hilarious. Like, they're like, girl, I don't know how you survived because I would honestly go to a proposal, like I would go to a consultation. I would be like, great, I can help you. I would not send a proposal. I would do the work before getting paid. Like, I would just go home and do it because I was so excited about it. And then I would present it and we would just be good. They would pay me and we would move on. But the amount of things that can go wrong in a situation like that and the user experience. So I did go to school for marketing and digital communications, and user experience is incredibly important to me. It always has been. And without Power of Process, I didn't have one. Like, I was a friendly girl. People could rely on me. I mean, if they sent me an email or a text, I was super quick to respond. So there's that. But in terms of actually running and operating a successful business, everything was in my head. There was nothing really like written down. I didn't have like a task list that I could duplicate super easily and check off as I go and time myself. Like, I have such a better structure. I feel so much more prepared. When I start a client before Power of Process, I was just like, well, I guess I'll start a client today. And what am I going to do first? I have no idea. I'm just going to design this and here we go. And now it's like, oh, well, I have to send my proposal first and oh, check that off. And so I feel like there's just a level of one, organization, but two, just like clarity on what the heck is going on in the business so we can kind of check in and make sure things are running on track. I mean, there before, I think it was honestly just like a text like, hey, how's it going? Any updates? Oh yeah, like things are moving along smoothly. Like, talk to you never. Whereas now I've got weekly updates. Like, there's just it's changed my entire business. It's made a
Oh my
business.
gosh, it's amazing. That's amazing. I love hearing that because I mean, I can relate to that. Before I started to figure it out, that's how I ran my business, right? It was kind of willy-nilly, fly by the seat of my pants, very reactive, responding to the
Yes.
client asking question. I do a lot of decorating. So I would be like on the floor in a client's condo. I'm sure you've heard me say this story before with like all the fabrics and a multiple floor plan options and some pictures of furniture. Like I was including the client in my design process. And there's this one client I remember, and they're still friends actually today. They're older, they're in their 80s now, and I remember them saying to me, well, Rebecca, what do you think? Like what?
Yeah.
And I would be like, oh, like I was afraid, I wasn't confident. And then the big question, okay, so then what's going to happen next? I used to get that
Mhm.
question. I don't know if you did, all the time. And
Yes.
I did not have an answer. I would be making it up as I went along.
Yeah. I definitely had the confidence. I would go in and be like, here's the plan. We didn't talk about it at all, but I've finished it, baby. And like, we're ready to rock. So that part I didn't have as much, but yes, no idea what was next. Oh, what's happening next? Like, what's the status on orders? Oh yeah, like I'll get those. Don't worry.
I
Like,
should probably check that out.
I didn't even have it written down that what date the order was coming. I just knew I ordered it and I checked it off my list, but like,
Yep.
there was no structure at all.
Yeah, totally. Too many times thinking, oh, shoot, I should probably follow up on that
Yeah.
fabric. And then I would, contact Cravat or whoever. And then I'd find out, oh my God, it's discontinued. I ordered that like
Yeah.
6 weeks ago. Shit, now what do I do?
Exactly, exactly. Yes. Yes,
Amazing.
we don't do that anymore. We have like a real system. We do the same thing for every client. And it can only get better. So that is my goal, is just to make every single time I have a client, they have a one step better experience. So whatever knowledge I'm learning
Yes.
from my last project, I can bring to my next one. But what's super easy about that is instead of in the old days where I'd maybe write down in a notebook what I should change and then completely forget about it when it comes to the client, I have a full system that I can just add an extra step to. So I'm able to change things kind of as I go. And it's been super awesome for me, Power Process, because, and I have taken it twice, I might go one more round. But what's been great is that because I have two almost separate businesses, like I do full service design, but then I also do home staging. So I find that even though they're very similar, it's almost a completely separate process. So because I went through Power Process once and did it for full service, and then I've almost done it again for staging, just so that I can have, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. And it's awesome because you can take it as many times as you want. Like I just
Yeah.
lurk in there anytime I want, and there's new things updated. Honestly, it's a great course. I recommend it to everybody.
So I want to just go back to something you just said. You said you do it the same way for every client. And I just want to talk about that because that was a big hurdle for me when I was first looking at this idea process. I really resisted this idea that every project can be run the same way. And I don't know if you had this same sort of fear, but I always thought like, well, it's full service, but like I'm just doing a kitchen, or we're
Mhm.
just doing the basement, and like doing a basement renovation is totally different than doing a kitchen, or it's completely different than decorating all the kids' bedrooms. And so I really resisted having a process that I could apply to all the projects because I didn't believe it was possible. And I mean, you're saying it is, and we can talk about that. But what I also heard you say, which I think is amazing, and I don't know if that was a takeaway from POP or not, but I always say inside Power of Process, pick one core offering, focus
Mhm.
on that, build out your process with that. Um, because you're right, staging and interior design decorating are not the same thing. And I do not see how the same process would apply. They're a
Mhm.
different service. But when you are staging someone's home, whether it just be their living room, the whole house, I don't know, whatever, 5,000 square feet, 1,000 square feet, I assume you follow the same process regardless.
Mhm. It's definitely still hard. Like you're saying, you have resistance. I know that I'm my biggest enemy. Like I am the person that stands in the way. So I duplicate my process and I follow it to a T, and everything is perfect. And then the next time I'm like, oh, well, I don't need this step, or, I don't need this. And then you realize you do need it. So I feel like
Yeah,
it's
well, that's
super
like
important. Yeah,
that's a whole other thing,
exactly.
right? And I talk about that all the time. Like once you get a process in place and you know that it's good and that it's right, and that yes, some small things will tweak and change, but don't make exceptions.
Yes.
Don't change your process for one particular client. In
Hmm.
my experience, every time I veer from my process in a drastic way, I regret it. Like,
Me
okay, you
too.
know what? I'll break the payment structure down differently for you.
Yeah.
Or, you know what? Maybe we'll wait to present this for you. And I always look back and I'm like, why the frick did I do that? Because
Yeah.
it's now I'm feeling like it's chaos again, and the
Yeah.
client's not happy because, and it's like I'm not following the process that I know works. And obviously you're going to be tweaking. I say process is a living, breathing thing. How you run your business
Yeah.
will evolve over the years. But once you find a core foundation to how you run any project, you want to follow and stick to those key milestones so that you aren't reinventing the wheel every time and then kicking yourself for doing it.
Well, it's even on the back end. Like they don't know that I'm not following my process. I have a styling job and I think, oh, like I don't need to send a presentation for it. I'm just going to go ahead. Well, then they email, hey, do you have a sample of this? Oh, shoot. Like that was part of my process that I should have implemented, right? So I feel like every time I've done it, I've learned, oh, just keep doing what you're doing. And maybe there's a few steps that you don't need to do, but then you need to communicate that with the client that I'm
Mm-hmm.
not, I'm not necessarily doing this. If you want me to, I can add it to the scope of work, but your project maybe is a little bit smaller, whatever that looks like, but just having that steady communication, because otherwise you get back to those like, hey, what's going
Mm-hmm.
on? Just checking in.
Totally. And it's funny. I mean, what I hear you saying there with you saying, "Oh, it's just a styling job, so we'll just." Anytime I catch myself using that word, just, I have to pause and reflect and listen to myself and say, "Oh, wait, Rebecca, you used that word again. every time you use that word, you're downplaying the amount of work that needs to get done, and you end up tweaking and veering from your process and you regret it. So it's
Yeah.
like catching yourself, even if it's just internally, you're thinking, oh, well, it's just this, or it's just my neighbor, or it's just anytime I've used the word just
Yeah.
and I've altered or considered altering, I always regret it. So that's a great way to sort of catch yourself. But of
And this
course,
is
you
it.
need a process in the first place to even get to that point.
Exactly. And this is why your podcast is awesome, because you learn something new every time. Like I'm like, oh, I'm writing that one down.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You need to be very
Justice
self-aware.
equals this. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, totally. That's what I recognize. So having a process is what the course is all about. As anyone who's been listening to us for a while knows, that Power of Process it's a business course, but it's specifically tailored to developing a process to run your design projects. Right. So Power of Process isn't necessarily teaching marketing to an in-depth extent. We're not teaching some of those other business financial practices. There's parts of that that are woven through, but the goal with the course is to get your business set up so that you can serve your client and do it, repeating it the same way every time, so that you don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel. You're not wondering what's the next step. And it helps you to grow a team or hire if that's something you want to do.
Well, and it's really not like process is such a buzzword. I feel like you can listen to different podcasts that are like, oh, perfect your process, do this, do this. And it just feels like, okay, like what's the actual takeaway? But that's the difference. Like I've taken a lot of courses. I'm an educational, I don't know, I just love it, everything about it. But I find that with your course, it was so much more hands-on and specific to my business and stuff that I could use tomorrow. Like every single module had something I could implement that day to make a better business. And that's where I think your course differs a lot from some of the other ones that I've taken. I just really like being able to actually use the knowledge that you learn. Because how many of us have bought courses and then they just sit on the shelf, or you listen to the first one and then kind of drop off the rest of the way, and there's great knowledge in them, but you don't actually use it ever, right? So I think being able to work on it kind of week by week and have it build on itself is really, really important too.
That's so wonderful to hear. And that's part of why we did a big revamp in 2023 of the course, because I wanted to make it even more applicable, meaning that I wanted it to be more bite-sized content that didn't make you feel stuck or like, oh, I can't move into the next module because I still have to do this big exercise, or I still have to do this huge like reflection on my business. And so I wanted to make it one of those courses, and it sounds like we did a good job, where each lesson is like, oh, I'm going to apply that right now, or oh, I can do that tomorrow.
Yeah.
And there's always more work you can do, obviously, right? You want to build out all
Yes.
of your what to expect documents. You want to create all your client facing PDFs. Like that takes time. But that was sort of the goal with this last revamp, is like, let's make it really tangible so that you can learn something and you can apply it. And I really dive in a lot more now in this sort of new and improved version of the course into specifically how I run my business, not for the purpose of making others do it my way. Absolutely not. And I hope that point is clear, but it's just always helpful to see how someone else is really doing it and living and breathing it in the trenches. Like I'm still running interior design projects, unlike a lot of other coaches out there. And so I am shifting and modifying and responding to market conditions and making sure that what we are doing inside our business works for our current clients. It's a great example for other design firm owners so that they can say, oh, I love how Rebecca did that. Oh, I wouldn't do it that way. But that got me thinking, maybe I can do mine like this. And what's cool
Exactly.
is coming out of Power of Process, and I'm sure you saw this inside the Facebook group, is like everyone's sharing their process that they've come up with,
Yes.
and they're all different.
Well, and that's the best part, is getting to see, because I'm like, I have a background in graphic design. So I love seeing how the graphics look and all of the like little details that are kind of like exciting and delightful for the client. And yeah, it's really cool to see everybody's process and be able to kind of look and see, okay, well, she did it this way, I'm going to try this way. But you still have that community where if yours goes wrong, you have like 7 other examples that you could try out, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Maybe let's just have a like, we're getting near our time, but I don't want us to finish without talking about that community aspect, because I think it's something that I don't know, you can tell me, but my impression is that people don't sign up for Power of Process because they want community. They're signing up for
Mhm.
Power of Process because they want to know, like, they want a blueprint. Like, tell me how to do it. Tell me how to run a project from A to Z. Like, give it to me. But then what they find is this amazing community. And you've even found like your own sub community where you have like
Mhm.
these weekly accountability calls with designers that you've become friends with through Power of Process. Can you just talk a little bit about your experience in the community side of Power Process?
Absolutely. I have been very, very fortunate that way. I believe also a little bit of due to manifestation and going after what you want to. But one of the modules has that you can look for an accountability partner within the course. And we all just got to post on Facebook, this is who I am. This is kind of what I'm looking for. And I really connected with someone on there, Yaz Nurili. I'm messing it up. Don't
Yasid,
put this in.
Yasid, who's been on this
Yeah,
podcast multiple
Yazid.
times. We love Yasid.
Yes, yes. So I made a really great connection with her right away because she didn't seem like she was going to judge me for not knowing my shit yet. So we connected, and she is also really good at bringing people together. And she brought two other members, Shirley and April, on as well. And it is amazing because we all have completely different backgrounds. Because, like you said, not a lot of people that are and maybe it's even people that are specifically taking your course that have these other backgrounds, and now they're getting into design, and okay, like, how do I make this a really good business? So like there's a PR person, there's someone that like has worked with contractors before specifically and like had a business with a contractor. There's someone who has been on TV. Like it's just we all bring different things to the table. So it's just really a great balance, and to be able to have that accountability still, like what, 3 years after I took the course, is incredible because not only is it something that's building, we're actually checking in. Like, okay, what are we doing this week? Did you do your canned emails yet? Did you do your working with us guide? Did you do this? So we're still actually building on some of the things from the course and looking at them again. So every year it's like, okay, well, we did contracts last year. Should we do them again? Okay. So we're always just making it better. So it's just one step better. It's having the people in that corner to be like, well, you didn't get it done. That's not okay. Like, come on, you gotta work, girl. So it's almost like having coworkers, and it's been incredible.
I
Totally.
love that. I love hearing that you guys are still doing it. And you know what's also kind of neat is, and I think this is accurate, that not all of you took Power of Process for the first time at the same time.
Yeah, all
You've
different
met
times.
because you've
Yeah.
come back to do it another time. And you mentioned this earlier, but for those who are listening, you do get lifetime access, meaning and at the moment, and this could change in the future, but at the moment we do, it is all recorded, but we have weekly live sessions. And so you can come back when we bring the course back and join that cohort, and you can join those Zooms. You can rewatch the content. You can join the new Facebook group. And that's where new connections are made from students who took the course 2 to 3 years ago, or someone who's taking it this month. So it's really kind of neat. And I just, and I talk about this all the time, like I just love bringing people together, and I love
Mhm.
connecting people. And I really want everyone, like you and your mom, I really care, and I want people to succeed. And I hope that comes across. But seeing these beautiful groups that come out of something I created, like it just truly fills my heart and it makes me a little bit
Yeah.
emotional. I love that you guys are obviously very regimented to keep that going. Like I have a group of designers, we're supposed to meet once a month in Toronto, and like we're always like, okay, can't do it this month.
Yeah.
That's maybe because we're trying to do it in person, but
I think it's
I love
easier
it.
because it's weekly. Like because like it's just in the calendar, you go and it's a business meeting. Like we don't treat it as if it's like girls getting
Social.
together and discussing our problems,
Yeah.
because it's not. It's like heavy work. We get in and it's like, okay, what was your homework, Ange? What are you doing tomorrow? Like okay, next person. Like it is literally just homework, successes from the week, problems, goodbye. Like we just get in and get it over with. So
It is. It's true accountability so that
mhm.
you don't want to show up and be like, for the third week in a row, I still haven't done the thing I said I was going to
Exactly.
do.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, so many of us, and I think especially women, we have a hard time holding ourselves accountable in
Mhm.
life. It's so easy to show up for someone else. Oh, well, I said I was going to go for dinner, and it doesn't matter that I have a cold. I mean, maybe this
Yeah.
has changed since the pandemic, right? But like, I'm going to go because I said I was
Yeah.
going to do it.
For somebody else.
Whereas I said I was going to go to yoga, but like, oh man, I'm just so tired from last night. But if you were meeting your friend at
Exactly.
yoga, you'd probably go. And
Exactly.
so Same.
Plus, it's just so different when you're working from home. Like if you have an office to work out of, I gotta get up, I gotta go, right? Whereas when you're at home, like sometimes I'm just in my sweats, but not on Tuesdays. Tuesdays I dress up for the ladies. So it's just like
I love
you
it.
have to get your stuff together. So yeah, it's been great.
So the ladies in your little accountability pod, if you're listening to this podcast today, I'm sure they'll be listening and supporting you. Just so you know, Angela only dresses up like that on those days.
Just on Tuesdays.
Just on
And
Tuesdays.
client days. Come on now.
I know. It's so funny. This morning I got up and I was like, hey, what? Okay, we've got podcast recording today. I'm like, oh. And then I'm going out. Then we're going out for date night. My husband and I'm like, oh, I can't wear sweats. I'm like, normally with podcasting, I can wear sweats and it just matters when I'm wearing on top. But today I was
Yeah.
like, well, I'm not going to go to a restaurant in sweatpants. I was like, oh, how annoying. But it does
Yeah,
make you feel a little bit more professional.
totally. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. This has been amazing. I love that. I don't know why it took us so long to get you on the podcast because your story is so inspirational. I love following your journey and just seeing how far you've come. It's really, it's so cool. It's like I've been there from like the beginning, like the genesis of your whole design career. And I can't wait to
Definitely.
just see where you guys go and where you take it. Before we wrap up our time together, I always want to ask if you have a last nugget of wisdom.
I totally do. I have a couple. But just from everything that I've kind of seen and done is be clear on what you want. Just don't be afraid to actually dream and plan. And for me, writing it down has changed everything for me. Like I said, I love manifestation. So in my personal life, that was never an issue. But just actually writing down and being clear, okay, what do I actually want? Let's put that down and then you can actually really figure out how to get there. So that's my main one. And then the other one would just be implement your learning. I know so many people that listen to so many podcasts, so many books, like everything, and they just take the knowledge and I don't know what they do with it. They just put it up on the shelf and they can't grow and build and become because they're not using that knowledge. So just making sure you implement the knowledge. I cannot tell you how much I've grown in the last couple of years and how I'm just so excited because I just know it's just gonna keep snowballing because there's no chance for it not to because I'm implementing so much. So definitely implement everything and don't be afraid to dream.
I love that advice. Can you maybe share with us, just because you've mentioned this a couple times about the manifestation and writing things down, do you have a tip for anyone who's listening today who's like, okay, I like this idea of manifestation, like I've created vision boards, but like, what's Angela doing? In a nutshell, like if someone couldn't do anything else, like what would you recommend that they do to sort of start their journey into getting better at manifesting their future?
I would just say be incredibly specific. Like for my house, for example, I put down every single thing that I wanted in this house, everything. I needed an office on the main floor. I wanted a big garage. I needed a big driveway for basketball, like everything. Down to I wrote down that I needed a path to water. And I kid you not, I have a path to a little river, and I wish that I would have said lakefront because, like, you know what I mean? Why did I say a path down to water? But
Oh my God, I
be
love this.
specific as possible because that's what you're going to get.
Angela, I'm just like, you just gave me, I'm like, because I'm always, it's so interesting. Okay, I'm just going to go on a tangent here for a second. I feel like when I'm trying to manifest and vision cast, which is what I like to call it a lot, vision cast for the future, I find myself, if I'm writing something down, like the house thing really resonates with me because I have some visions of like that there's this house in my dream vision. And I start to write down, the attributes of the house that matter to me, like a white picket fence, and that's my
Yeah.
dream, and the green space, and blah, blah, blah. And then I find myself, I'm like, oh, this is too much detail. I actually think that. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is too much detail. I don't need that much detail. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. That's also my impatience coming through. Like, let's just get through this exercise
Yeah.
so that I can move on with my day. But I love that you just said that because my intuition or my instinct is to fill out like, I want like, yeah, enough space for 2 cars in the driveway. So I'm not like
Yeah.
hitting my eyeball against a tree branch trying to get out of my car every morning and every night. This is true. This is my real
Exactly.
life.
Exactly.
Yes.
And
And
I
I
mean,
guess someone might hear this and say, that's ridiculous. If I write down, there's no way that I'm going to find everything I want, let's say in a house. What would
Well,
you
I
say to
mean, some
them?
of the things you have to bend, like mine, I wanted those, I really like those, like, you like the picket fence. I really like the two pillars at the start of the driveway, but I can build that. Like, that was the one thing that wasn't on my list. And then the other one is I wanted I wanted an 80s to 90s style so that I could design it myself. Not everybody wants that, right? So being specific in those ways, like, it's not all going to be like the juiciest, but it works out, right?
Oh
Even my
my God, I
husband,
love it.
I wanted a square jaw, but he has a beard, so you can't tell what his jaw looks like.
I wanted a square jaw. Damn it, you have a beard.
That works.
Oh, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much, Angela. There's like so much great wisdom in this episode. I'm so excited for everyone to hear this and follow you. Where can people find and follow you?
Yeah, so they can find me. I'm on Facebook and Instagram and at my website, all Upstaged Design. There's two D's because it's Upstaged Design. So that's the only thing that kind of gets people sometimes, but you can follow me on there and yeah, send me a message. I love meeting people, connecting.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much. And I can't wait to follow your continued success and keep making those fun videos with your mom on Instagram because they're awesome and gold.
Thank you.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode with Angela. I loved her tip at the end about manifesting. It's really got me thinking about how I need to be more intentional and more specific when I am casting my vision for the future. And it's something that I'm going to start teaching to all my coaching students because it's obviously working for her. It's also just such an inspiration. So, Angela, thank you so much for being on this podcast today. I've been wanting to tell your story to the world for so long, and I'm so glad you were able to join me to tell it. There's so much power in feeling that you are supported in making a big decision. Not only, obviously, was Angela supported by her colleagues and her husband, but she had our Power of Process community right there alongside her, giving her the tools so that she could step into running a design business from the get-go. So many designers come to this industry as a second, third, fourth career, as I mentioned in the episode. And I think it's just really a great reminder for anyone who's kind of on the fence and is kind of afraid to like give those 2 weeks notice. Angela's story is an inspiration. You can do it. Lean into your passions, your desires. And then, like Angela said in her nugget of wisdom, you gotta do the work. It's not enough to just listen to my podcast. You need to sit down and implement the things that you're learning. Join us inside Power of Process. It's coming back around, and I am so excited to welcome a brand new cohort in. And hopefully Angela will be back there with other Power of Process alum to help you along your process building journey. If you guys have questions, obviously send me a DM. You can find out more at RebeccaHay.com/pricing. That's a lie. That's for the other course. You can follow along at Rebecca Hay. You can find out more at RebeccaHay.com/power of process. I hope to see you there.